All right, hello everyone. My name is Marcus Lewis, and I'm the Assistant Professor of Jazz Studies here at UMKC in Kansas City, Missouri. And I want to talk about my weekly jazz tip. All right, so I'm going to talk about writing for three horns. Let's say you're playing a gig and there's three horn players and you don't have charts. It can be very challenging because sometimes it's very hard for us to play the melodies together. Sometimes I just jot out some quick charts so that we can at least sound good playing together, and especially with people who you haven't played with very much. I want to talk about a couple of concepts that can be helpful to you and just to help you get started if you're new to arranging. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is range and intensity. Always be sure that you're keeping the instruments in good ranges for them, which is usually about, for most instruments, the middle 2 octaves of their range. Sammy Nestico is great at that. That's why his charts always sound really clear. But that's another post. We'll do a post on ranges and transpositions later. All right. So if you're trying to harmonize a melody, the way that I approach it is the melody note always dictates what the voicing should be. So in jazz and really in any music, we're trying to clearly harmonize a melody without taking away from it. And so we have to determine what the melody note is in relationship to the chord so that we can harmonize it. All right. So in music, the thirds and sevenths are essential tones because along with the bass player and those two notes, it gives us a tremendous amount of information with what the harmony can be. So I would always advise you to have those in your voicings so that they sound clear harmonically. So once you determine what the melody note is, then the next step is figuring out what scale degree that is. So for instance, if you have a C minor chord, C minor 7, right? You would know that if you had an E flat as your melody note, then the melody note is on the third. So then I would add the 7th below it. And then I have another option of two notes that I can use in this context. One being the root and one being the 5th. But if the bass player is playing the root, then the better choice would be G here. So from the top down, E flat, B flat, G. All right? Let's say the melody note's B flat. So now I know that I need a third below it. And then once again, I could choose the root or the 5th here. I'm going to choose the 5th right below the 7th. All right? Let's say the melody note's not a third or 7th. Let's say that that note is a G, right? So G is the 5th of C minor. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a third below that, and that's going to be E flat. And then the 7th is going to be B flat below that. And so now I have a very complete voicing for C minor 7. The second step I want to talk about, or the second concept that I want to talk about, is triad writing. Instruments sound very good in triadic structures, and so they'll be used forever and ever because that's literally science in the overtone series of how our instruments are built. That's why they sound the way they do. And when instruments play triads, they really ring because you have physics working for you. So take advantage of that as an arranger. So there's two applications of this. Either harmonizing them in diatonic triads, right? So all the diatonic triads in a particular key, right? So depending on what your melody note is, will determine what the diatonic triad is. And then second, my favorite use of it is using them as upper structures. So let's say, for instance, we had a B flat major 7 chord and our melody was a G, right? Well, you could write a C triad above that, and that would give you all the upper structures. It would give you the 13, the sharp 11, and the natural 9. And then within those, all of those voicings we talked about them being closed voicings. Closed voicings just simply means that all the notes are contained within an octave. So we can also open up these voicings, right? So we can open them up. Usually in slower songs or when we want the chords to resonate more, we can spread them out. So the more spread out your voicing is, the more time it needs to resonate. The closer your voicings are together, then the more it can move around and still be clear. So for instance, if we take that C triad and our melody note's a G, we could take that E and drop it down an octave, keep the C in the middle, and then we have a more spread, resonant voicing. So once again, my name is Marcus Lewis from UMKC, and this is my jazz tip. Thank you so much.